Hello everyone. How are you doing? Um, hmm. It looks like I wonder if, yeah, probably the sound is not working again. So I'll have to probably do this all over again because it kind of looks like the sound is not working because this is what happened as well. But I will double check just to make sure that our audio is working correctly. And I still don't really know what happened with that because, yes, last time I tried this, it there was no audio. So to double this. Oh, but yes, actually, I was wrong. It's working. Great. I was getting worried. So if you're watching on replay, what actually ended up happening was that last time I tried making this live stream, the audio was not working correctly. So then, like, I ended up talking for 50 minutes and you couldn't hear anything. And so that was kind of frustrating. But here we are again. We are doing this conversation all about energetics in social interactions. Okay, so we are purely focusing on the energetic side, though this is a little bit psycho spiritual conversation. And so, therefore, I do have to make a disclaimer that this is not going to replace your, therapy or medical attention or anything like that. This is not going to replace any treatment that you may have, though, of course, there could be benefits for the energetic and holistic side as an additional treatment, obviously, and like additional information. So this is purely for informational and educational purposes. Okay, and as you can see in the thumbnail, I created this whole mind map here. Okay, and of course, just know yourself, know where you are at, emotionally and mentally and spiritually when you come into this video, when you come into this conversation, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. So just know where you're at, what you're generally feeling, and things like this. There will be I will be giving some useful tips into how to manage your energy, for example, in these social interactions, and I will also be providing some insight as to how I personally have felt and interpreted some of these ways that our energy tends to work in social interactions. And really, the goal of why we are doing this, why we are having this conversation to begin with, is to become a better vessel of pure, unconditional love light. And to really make sure that we are expanding as much love, as much pure, unconditional, divine love into this realm, into our environment, into our energy field, into everything, so that we can become more love in a human vessel, because that really is the changing particle, that is the really the changing paradigm shift that we can have in these in our human interactions. And it is important to understand what the mechanism of this pure unconditional love light is in our social interactions, like how does it really work. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So so it is going to be one of those things that's going to allow us to have much more harmonious interactions, because we're not so much coming from our ego, for example. We're not so much coming from, our, say, for example, our assumptions or our shadows, our wounds, our insecurities. Because sometimes, yes, our egos can be very loud, and we might, sometimes feel as though, how do I phrase this? We might feel as though what's what we are experiencing is something personal, right? Like we might take things very personally. That might be like one of those things that can happen when we are dealing with egoic perspectives, but really there's like a lot more than meets the eye. And once we start to shift our perspective from a higher dimensional perspective, we start to see all of these other things, and we start to see, for example, different soul lessons that we are going through. We're going to start to feel much more into different levels of our energy field and different levels of our existence. And we are starting to understand things a lot more deeply. So that's just one thing to consider, of course. And and like I said, like we can have all kinds of assumptions that do usually come from our ego and from our egoic self. So then we might sort of push and project these assumptions into others, and that sort of gives off a very weird that gives off a very weird energy when there's like assumptions come into play, and projections like that, and any kind of projections really, when we project things onto others, that can easily like that could cause sometimes like almost like a jinx like effect, so to speak. It doesn't necessarily mean that every single time you make an assumption or you project something onto someone that you would jinx them or that you would hex them or something. But if it's chronic and if you constantly send that energy to somebody, that can really have that effect. And this can also happen if somebody is sending that to you, and you might be feeling like, okay, what's going on here? Like what's happening in my energy field? And you feel something being sort of pushed into your energy field that doesn't really feel like yours. You might be having thoughts that don't really feel like yours, and it almost feels like sometimes they can even be looping if that person is sort of ruminating with those thoughts, and if they're putting a lot of energy through it. So that's like one example of how like assumptions and projections can easily start to create these energy forms in our fields. Now, how do we solve this? Okay, well, first of all, we'll have to understand that even other people have their higher selves, and they even have their multidimensional selves, and they have their highest capacity as humans. So personally, what I've started to do is whenever I catch myself, projecting things onto others, I try to remind myself that okay, there is like that person has a higher self, and that person also has a higher frequency self in their human form. Okay, so their entire human essence, their entire so-called egoic self, which again, when we talk about the egoic self, that's our mind, our emotions, our body, our personality, our brain, everything that creates our human essence, that makes us human. So it isn't necessarily the soul or the higher self that is the egoic self, but the egoic self is technically one big part of what makes us who we are in this life, but it isn't obviously the whole thing, because then there's also our soul that is the true who we really are deep down inside, as well as our higher self, which is closest to our human experience and closest to our human existence spiritually, but our higher self just sees a little bit further and from a different vantage point than we from our egoic levels, right? So even with those, with like knowing that there's a lot, higher consciousness that each person can embody on in this lifetime and in this human experience. And I want to always remind myself that when I catch myself in an assumption or a projection, that first things first, those assumptions and projections are just my interpretation of things, and it's more likely that I am wrong than it is more likely that I am right. And there is, and again, even though I'm a very observant person, I'm capable of noticing that I too can make mistakes. And so can you, and you, and you, and you, and you. each and every one of us can make mistakes and miscalculations, misjudgments, and that's important to remember. And so I start to always remind myself, now getting to the point, I start to remind myself that that person also is they have a higher version of themselves. Say, for example, if I assume that perhaps somebody is in a victim mentality, that they're acting like a victim, and they're not really mm, they're not really they're sort of maybe that they are weak, even though every time I catch myself in that thought that somebody else is weak, I'm kind of like, why am I thinking this way? Like it just feels really weird. It doesn't feel natural to me because I tend to really see the positive of people. But obviously, sometimes those things happen in the brain, like the brain is weird. Um, and then I remind myself that, okay, deep down, I know that perhaps this person that I'm assuming is in a victim state of consciousness, they also have an empowered state of consciousness. They also have a state of consciousness where they are in their full sovereignty, in their full power, where they're making big fucking moves on this planet, and they are doing the best I have ever seen them do. And again, at this point, I do not want to project those onto them because I obviously don't even want to force those kind of things onto others. But I do remind myself of that. Okay, this person could also make big changes in their lives, and perhaps they just need some encouragement, right? And that there's so many different ways to approach things instead of this sort of very unproductive judging and assuming and projecting. So that's just one thing to consider. And then, like, obviously, where's my shadow louder than my heart? That's a good question that I actually wrote in this huge mind map. So where is my shadow louder than my heart? And sometimes this can even show us where perhaps we might feel a little bit insecure about perhaps somebody's judgment, or even like envy. That's like envy is something that I'm going to go into. Personally, I don't really feel that much like envy or jealousy because I know that the universe is abundant. So even if I see somebody doing something that perhaps I might want for myself, and I might feel envious or jealous for a while, um, I quickly catch myself and I realize that I can also make that happen. And the universe is abundant. So these opportunities are not going to run out of us, right? They're not going to run out from us. And in regards to that, sometimes if this envy, if this jealousy is kind of like really again really energized, it can almost create like a psychic attack or an evil eye kind of frequency. So it can actually really feel uncomfortable, and I've also actually felt that in my own life sometimes. And again, I don't hold grudges against people because like people are just people. We have feelings, and sometimes people just have feelings. They don't really intend to throw the evil eye. But if it's like repetitive, constant, you know, projection of this energy and constant directing of this energy, then it might almost have that, feeling, that sensation that they are glancing at you with the evil eye. Uh, and so that's something to, really consider. Um, Sometimes what we can do in the situation, obviously, is to really understand that first of all, we don't need to change our actions if someone's kind of being jealous of us or anything. Like, we don't really need to change our actions, but we do need to really be mindful and aware and like really conscious of, okay, that's what perhaps how that person might interact with the world or interact with others. And they might be prone for this kind of energy. But then on the other hand, what we can do, we can just keep on clearing our energy fields because that's going to be an important way of us making sure that the energy exchange, that it doesn't get into like again that chronic almost jinx like state where it's like actually going to start to affect us. um, but like if it's like a one-off, then obviously just clear it, just cleanse and clear it. And sometimes a simple conversation can even help. Like that can actually help people for when it comes to maybe understanding why certain energies are floating in your field. But usually I just set up protections. My favorite protection, let's see if I can find it in the chat, because then I will be able to show it to you. But that's just something that I do against the evil eye. Hold on, here is eye. Then let me find. Because I think some of you are going to appreciate this. This is emoji magic. So this is what I do when I want to protect myself from the evil eye. It's called the warthog. So that's what I sometimes do. Uh, um, and so of course there's like other ways that you can protect yourself from the evil eye. Um, but again, just remember that sometimes humans are just humans, and they don't necessarily mean to be throwing the evil eye at you, if that makes sense. But it is important as always to keep our energy hygiene, and to keep our energy field clear, so that we'll make sure that these energies don't stick to us. And of course we want to make sure that we are good at navigating and dealing with our own emotions, because when we are really good at dealing with our own emotions, then we're not going to be accidentally sending evil out to other people's, and then we're not going to be sort of projecting these really intense energies at others. And that's what I also want to speak about. Okay, because then there's also this thing about different like uh, pulling and pushing energies. So sometimes, for when it comes to when people kind of push frequencies, that can be from like control issues, and it can often come from this like, I want this person to do this. But sometimes these manipulating energies can also be a result of people pleasing and like fawning. So uh, so here it's important to really ask yourself what really needs to be healed. And it is really important for us to be authentic in the situation, because that is one of the highest frequencies that there is. Being who you really are, being your true self. And that is one way also to channel that pure unconditional love light and divine love light into these realms, is by being who you really need, who you really are. And of course, who you really need to be. I mean, because sometimes you need to be someone for, someone else. But this is not to, again, say that you're going to need to go out and heal absolutely everyone who comes your way, because we're not always responsible for that. And sometimes it would even be like, it would be really unwise to try and heal somebody who perhaps doesn't want to be healed, or who didn't consent to it, because that can also cause a bit of a dynamic, where like a weird energy dynamic between yourself and that other person, where you might then just keep need to keep on giving to them. And it can almost cause like this soul contract, where you then need to be the healer for them, if that makes sense. So So that's something to keep in mind. Um, but yes, even with people who do not mean to be manipulative, their energy can feel like that. So I think this is exactly why we need a whole lot more discernment when it comes to energetics, is because sometimes the energies that other people reject and that they send to us, they can come from just like these wounds that they haven't healed because they're afraid of being who they really are. So then they try to like look ahead and like try to predict every single thing that the other person's gonna say if they say something, right? Like if I was in this state of consciousness, I would try to predict what someone else is saying. If I say something, and then I try to like make sure that that person really likes me by trying to sort of play this human chessboard of like, okay, if I say this, that's what they're gonna say. So I'm going to make sure that I say this so that they don't say that, So it's like it's really weird, and that's why it comes across as manipulative energy, because it's like you're not really being authentic and upfront and truthful as who you really are, because you're trying to make sure that the other person likes you instead of you making sure that you like them, for instance. So, and that's something that I sometimes have heard. Like, like, do you even like that person? Like you're making sure that everybody likes you, but you're not even sure if you like the other person. So I think that's something good to remember here. And then there's another one that's like pulling or even like holding in place. And this can come from abandonment wounds. Okay, so sometimes people are kind of just like, no, don't go, and then they just sort of pull energetically, or they try to hold you, sort of, uh, not necessarily down always, but it could be like feeling sensations around your leg, for example. So it could be something like, like they could be, for example, they could be lonely, or they could just be dealing with some severe traumatic situation that they haven't healed properly. And so then they have these abandonment wounds and they are just afraid that everyone's going to leave them. And there's, again, I don't judge that, obviously. I mean, people can have all kinds of, situations, but energetically, that can feel a bit suffocating, and it can almost feel like someone's like clinging onto you. And it can almost feel like this constriction, like you're not having the space to move. And naturally, we don't want to be held captive. Okay, so that this energy can actually repel those from you who you want to stay with you. Or yeah, that's the best way I can put it. It can actually be repelling, because uh, then it's like you're, yeah, it just feels forceful. And also when it comes to the pushing of frequencies, so when we are sort of perhaps trying to force something, or we're trying to push something to go a certain way, because perhaps we want the person to do something, or whatever, that can also be repelling, because then that's going to feel like it's going to feel like you are chasing that other person. And when we are chasing another person, they're going to run, right? They're going to run. That's just how the energy dynamic works. Whatever you chase runs away. And so just remember that. And before I move into the next point, it's like, just remember that the source doesn't abandon us. Okay, so I had like uh, a good when I still used Twitter/X, I had posted this tweet that we are a lot more connected through that pure unconditional love light, rather than like cords, rather than our wounds, rather than you know this this weird dynamic of like just trying to pull people who then obviously most likely will step away. that they will detach and take distance sometimes. So that's kind of it's not important to remember that the source doesn't abandon us, and we are not going to be abandoned when we realize that we are all connected through this pure unconditional love light. And when we are able to embody this pure unconditional love light, we are going to realize that even deeper. And we're going to realize that, we are, again, abundant within ourselves. We are full, we are expansive, we are harmonious and coherent. And we don't really have to worry about lacking people from around us, right? And we're going to feel so much more connected to our fellow humans as well. And so it's going to be important to every once in a while remind ourselves of what our expectations are of certain interactions and people. What are our expectations going into this conversation, whichever conversation we're having? What are our expectations when we go on a date with someone? Are we expecting them to love ourselves immediately? Or are we expecting to perhaps make a new friend? What are we really expecting out of each interaction? Honestly, what I found the easiest way to deal with this is to not have any expectations at all. But just know what I am looking for. Just know what I'm there for, knowing my intentions, right? I don't go there to try and control people or to try and force people to be my friends or to try and, make sure I get a phone number of a hot guy or something. I don't go on dates just for the achievements. I go there to connect and see if there are people there that I might have a beautiful chemistry with, or a beautiful uh, romantic thing with, or something entirely different. And I'm also willing to let source, to let the infinite spark of all creation, to sprinkle some of that magic there, to see perhaps there's something that I hadn't even thought of. And I'm going to let it surprise me. And I'm going to be real honest, this has led me to the best results ever. This has actually led me to find some, first of all, very useful links to resources that are needed, but also really just beautiful, amazing human beings. And of course, that has always required me to be the one to take that step to get into those situations. But I haven't gone into those, I haven't really been in those situations themselves in like this forceful, I will have to make something happen. I will have to make sure that I get the number, or, like that's not the way it goes. And even when I text with people, I try to, remind myself of this. Okay, am I trying to like is my ego speaking louder than my heart here? What am I not saying perhaps? And where can I learn more? And also just trying to make sure that I'm not having unrealistic expectations. But then, of course, there are things that we might expect from others that we should communicate with, because sometimes we don't know about those things. So like, of course, there have been times when I have had certain expectations with people, but because I didn't speak them out loud, then it just kind of popped up and it was a surprise and stuff. Um, and I guess the next thing, um, that we should discuss here is emotional energy. Okay, because I do tend to feel it when people are dealing with, say, heavy emotions, but they're not really speaking it out loud. And sometimes what can happen is that they just sort of dump it onto you and they don't say anything. It's just like, and it's just in your field, and you're just like, Okay, what just happened? um, and I also like with this. This is tricky, okay? Because sometimes you get this from people you don't really know that well, or people you're not that close with. So you'll just have to like make sure what's appropriate in that situation. Like, is it going to be appropriate for you to ask that person, like, how they're doing? Is everything okay? And those kind of things. But sometimes you can also just let it show itself. You can let things show themselves, because this is what I've also seen happen quite a bit. I often ask my divine teams, pure love light, source, infinite spark of all creation, can you show me where this is coming from? And sure, they show it. They show it either in my dreams or in my visions, or they show it in real life. And usually, actually, it is in real life. I will get clarity on where it's coming from, and what it is. And that really is a beautiful thing, when that happens and I realize, oh, okay, this is what that is. And then you can proceed from there, right? But of course, sometimes these things do require, communication with people. Sometimes people are insecure, and or, you know, again, they could have some trauma, so they may not feel that strong or confident or brave to really express what's going on within them. And so, uh, especially if you yourself perhaps wonder if you are accidentally dumping things onto people. First things first, do you have a energy hygiene practice? Do you practice good energy hygiene, which means you also clear your emotional fields? Do you do emotional clearing to begin with? So to go deeper with that, do you do emotional clearing, or do you do any kind of therapeutic work? Are you capable of self reflection? Those are some of the key things that you should know, so that you're going to be able to sort of assess if your emotional energy is just floating around you, if it's just going into all kinds of places, or if you're actually taking good care of it. And you can just tune into your emotional field and just kind of feel into it. Ask it, what's going on here? Are we good? Or are we not good? That's something that you could do. That's something that you could consider. Uh, And you can also set an intention to not dump. Okay, this is a life hack that I learned some time ago. I don't remember when, and I'm not 100% sure of um, who I learned it from. But you can set an intention to not dump your energies onto others. So you might be going through stuff. So you can also set an intention to, like, make sure that this person uh, doesn't have to deal with my emotional energy. But now I actually realize that sometimes this can also come across as uh, trying to hide energies. But you can also you can just make sure that you actually clear your energies before you go then into that interactions, and then perhaps just say, like, look, I haven't been feeling my best, so apologies if you can feel that. Like, I don't mean to dump on you, but here's the thing. And then obviously, you know deal with it accordingly, right? And know the right place and time, because with some people, of course, that might be totally okay, and some people probably don't really even feel the energy, right? Because majority of people aren't as sensitive as, for example, I am. So okay, that's one thing. Okay. uh, One thing that I also haven't yet touched on is energy vampirism. So this is also kind of like in the pulling energy kind of layer of things. So the weird thing about energetic vampirism, I actually have a short video coming soon about this. But the weird thing about this energy specifically is sometimes when we're dealing with energetic vampirism, when we may be having like an energetically vampiric activity in our energy field, we might start to feel powerless, and we might start to feel like we actually need to get that energy from somewhere. And that's like the trickiest part about this. But the important thing here is to notice when that thought pattern is coming, and remember that we are actually sovereign. So we are actually sovereign, and I think it's always going to be important to remember that when we are, you know, dealing with these any kind of energetic attacks, really. So if there is like a, whether it's energetic vampirism, whether it's, evil eye, whether it's, somebody just having kind of manipulating energies, that again could be just their phoning response, or it could like cannot really say that anyone wouldn't be just outright controlling or manipulative, because those people exist. But let's just remember that humans are humans, and there can also be just people and just beings that are sort of just like people pleasers, or they're just like fawning to not necessarily mean to control it, but their energy comes earlier. Uh, so just repeating it again, but yeah, it's important to always remember this, where our power really is, and our sovereignty, that we are indeed powerful, sovereign beings, and we do have the access to that pure unconditional love light, to infinite spark of all creation. We do have the access to that, and we don't need to go to other people or to other beings to, get their energy, because that can be really draining if we just go to other people and just like, like this. That's not really uh, going to be like, it's not a long-term solution. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we cannot get support from other people, because we can, and it is just as necessary as the support from our divine team of pure love light, and it's just as important as, our divine support. So that's something to remember. And for when it comes to, spiritual interaction and this kind of spiritual communication, so for example, telepathy, it's important to know with something like that, that there should be consent, that there should be like a mutual agreement on that. Because when people sort of attempt to do telepathy non-consensually, that can feel really intrusive. And I personally felt this, where perhaps sometimes people might try to, figure out what I'm thinking, or they're trying to like figure me out, so to speak. And I can sort of feel it around my head. It almost feels like they're like sort of touching my head, if that makes sense. Um, and it's not the same sensation, by the way, as the tingles in the crown chakra, because when your crown is tingling with like energy, and when it's like really activate, that's a different sensation. So with this, there's also like a little bit of nuance going on, and so it's going to be important to know the difference, and it's going to be important to know to like not try to force a spiritual communication with someone, and to always initiate it from the heart, from the higher heart center, and through the higher self. Because then the higher self of perhaps that other person is going to be able to distinguish if that communication or if that message is going to be allowed to go through. Because that way you're going to make sure that it also is going to be consensual, and that the energy is coming in, like it sort of goes through a bit of a filter, and it's going to be coming through as its most pure frequency. So then there isn't going to be like these conditional elements, if that makes sense. There isn't going to be all of that sort of conditioning and all of this perhaps like energetic baggage. So if you're like dealing with something, if you're having a, like say you're having a hard day, but you're still wanting to have like a spiritual communication with somebody, like an incarnate human being, um, and you just want to do that sort of like for practice sake, then obviously like the first thing would be to do that clearing process and to do any necessary, you know, emotional regulation and stuff like that, and then as clear as you can, do that contact through the higher levels, not necessarily projecting into that person's like egoic self, so the avatar, what you're seeing, or trying to sort of force it to their mind. Okay, and just remember that heart-centered connection as the basis there, because the heart is the frequency, the heart is the portal to the purest frequencies. And again, like not trying to like push things or like pull things or that kind of stuff, just remembering the sort of how that pure unconditional love light radiates, just coming from that pure and unconditional place. And the key word here is unconditional, because when it's unconditional, it's giving without needing to get anything in return. And that's how you're making sure that the connection is pure. That's how you're making sure that any interactions are are sort of starting from a place of pure connection, that they're coming from a place of, you know, that just that love as a basis frequency, because there isn't like this weird, again, this weird game, sort of like I do this so that you would do that, right? There isn't any of that when you're doing things without expecting anything in return. And perhaps one more thing that would be, there's a couple more things actually. Because there's still some things that I haven't actually discussed that are in my handy mind map. But like one thing that's important is to, you know, because over this conversation I've discussed a lot about, you know, well, not a lot, but you know, the concept of trauma and the sort of, the idea of trauma is one thing that has popped up here in this conversation. And it's important for us to learn to break these old patterns. And sometimes our ego needs to be trained into that. So our egoic levels, our mind, our emotions, our even our body and our nervous system, they might need some training for when it comes to learning these new ways of being. So when we're breaking these old patterns, we're going to have to really sort of consciously start to create these new neural pathways, and making sure that we are also energetically clearing that old energy. So that's going to be an important part as well, because sometimes we might be doing everything to create the new, but then we forget to do the energetic clearing, like we forget to do purification, and then we wonder why things aren't moving, right? So it's going to be important to remember that as well, at least every now and then, to do some good energetic clearing. And also vice versa. If we are energetically clearing all the time, but we're not changing any of our actions, we're not changing any of our thought patterns or our nervous system calibration, if we're not changing any of that, then we're going to need to start to change those things in order to ground those frequencies, these new frequencies, and this purification into this realm as well. So it goes both ways, and that's going to always be important to remember. And the cosmic pulse of love doesn't beat to the rhythm of our insecurities. This is something that I wrote, I think it was last night, because something still came to my mind last night about this. Like our insecurities, they are this ego creation basically, and the cosmic pulse of love knows that our experience is so much bigger than that. That we as beings are so much bigger than our insecurities. And that once we heal those things, we are able to live a much more harmonious and peaceful life. And that ultimately is the result of doing this work and of becoming a greater vessel of this pure unconditional love light. Our interactions are going to become a whole lot more harmonious and peaceful. There's not just peace within, but there's peace without. And the impact that we have on those around us is, it's going to be felt. It's going to be there. And life is going to look very much different. And obviously that doesn't mean that every now and then there wouldn't be people that maybe try to push our boundaries or sort of test us or, pick up a fight. Sometimes that can happen, but it doesn't mean that we have failed all of this work. Because if the majority of time that doesn't happen, then yes, indeed, we have completed the sort of assignment. I don't know if I like the word for that, but we have indeed created a much more harmonious frequency on a day-to-day level as a consistent level of frequency, consistent shift in consciousness. So that's that's the sort of talk itself. If you have any questions, do leave them in the chat box below. If you are subscribed, you can leave a comment in the chat box. And so remember to be love itself. Be that unconditional, divine, infinite love light in your day-to-day. Remember to be that in a human vessel. Because that is how we truly start to create the higher realm experience on Earth. We start to anchor in those higher timelines, into this realm of existence. And that is exactly, I think that's exactly what humanity needs. So you can, of course, leave those comments in the chat. I will be here for a little while just to see if people have any questions or if they have something they want to share. The chat box is open for that. So I will just wait for a little moment. But I'm so happy that this actually worked this time. Because if you saw my community post a few days ago, when I tried to do this live stream, first time the audio didn't work, and I ended up talking for like 50 minutes, and nobody could have heard anything that I said because the audio wasn't working. But this time it was, and I actually managed to make this under 50 minutes so far. And yeah, this is what I meant when in my announcement video, because I made an announcement live stream and it only lasted for like 20 minutes. That was short, because yes, I can talk for an hour straight if I get the opportunity. If I get the topic, then yes, I will talk for an hour. I can just have a little water break. So looks like nobody has any more questions. Or do you? I mean, you can always, of course, leave those in the comments below, so that then I can maybe get back to you later. Like if at this point you don't have any questions, or perhaps this has been so much information that there just isn't anything to ask us of yet. That is totally fine also. And I will make sure that I respond to those comments. But I was actually really happy that I was able to get this done today and to have this very important conversation, because there's so much here. Oh, Heather, hello, Heather. I have been opting out of interacting. I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's yeah. I can understand that though, because I also sometimes don't interact a whole lot with like content, if that makes sense. Because sometimes I like to have that energy hygiene, and I take it as far as digital spaces. So then I don't. Then I don't like end up commenting a whole lot. I think of you so often. I hope you're well. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think of you too sometimes, and I see your videos, but then I just like I forget to watch them. But I'll need to catch up with your garden stuff like soon because I haven't looked at it in a while. And yes, I'm actually doing really well. I'm doing a lot better than like 6 months ago, for example. the Yeah, the autumn was quite something. I was not doing my best at that time. It was quite stressful, but now we're getting better, much better now, and I am getting really excited to have more of these live conversations and also creating content again, writing, and I've been writing almost every day something, and like I showed in my last successful live stream that I made like an entire online library for my new deck, so it's totally free to visit on my website, and then but then of course my deck is I sell them and stuff, but yeah, that's just that link, by the way, should be in my description, the link to my deck. It's okay. Being in the US at these times is hard. Yeah, that's what I've heard. And like I kind of like I don't watch the news that often. Like I don't really watch them much at all, but I do sometimes see a little bit of that those headlines come through social media and stuff and popping up here and there. So I'm kind of aware of what's going on, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be traveling to the United States for like a couple of years at least. But then there's also a part of me that has this sense that okay, I have a feeling that it's not going to last as long as most of us expect. And I had a similar, feeling the last time this person was the president, if you know what I mean. So I had a similar feeling that time that they would not continue, and kind of, but this time I feel like I'm not necessarily seeing the same. I'm not having the same clarity on whether it's going to be like the next 4 years or if it's going to be even sooner. So and I tend to stay out of these conversations generally because it is, it just brings about all kinds of polarization and duality and intense energies. It just brings up so much more of this like you know chaotic vibes. So I generally try to stay away from that, and it can be also like very stimulating to the mental field in a not so positive way, so it can sort of almost like suck you in. So that's kind of why I stay away from those conversations, and I don't like bring those things onto my channel that often. Your energy is much more healing. Oh, thank you. And I mean, I would assume so because like because yeah, I'm a lot more on, if that makes sense. And I've been doing like a lot of work, and I'm definitely doing sort of walking my talk with embodying more of that divine love and divine light into myself. And I take much better care of myself. But probably right now I take much better care of myself than I have in like in a while, really. But yeah, that's kind of the thing, I guess. And so, if people don't have any more questions here, I'm sorry, but I wanted to say hello and that you seem. Oh, thank you. No, don't be sorry. That's okay. That's perfectly okay, and that's totally fine. Because it's nice to also like catch up with you all when you come on here into the live chat. That's also okay. Because I'm happy to talk to you all whenever you pop. And I've been getting a lot more comments recently as well, and I really appreciate that. It's so nice to, because I feel like I'm starting to finally sort of have the have my soul family find me on this channel. So it's really wonderful, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you all for all of that, all of the love, and all of the support, and all of your care, of course, and all of you all. Take care as well. I am so happy to be bringing more content to you all. And again, most of my content has been on the short feed, but I will be posting another reading next week very soon. So stay tuned for that. And again, if you're watching this on replay, you can drop your questions in the comments below. And I hope this has helped you. I will see you next time. Bye.